video, I gave you a tour of my apartment in Playa Del Carmen. And on this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to find your own apartment here. It's very similar to my video on how to find an apartment in Tulum. So if you're planning to move to Tulum, then make sure to watch that video. But this video is all about how to find an apartment in Playa Del Carmen. So let's get into it. So the first place you can look is on Airbnb. So Airbnb used to be a great cheap alternative to staying in hotels. But over the last year, Airbnb has become more expensive, especially here in Mexico, now that the Mexican government has imposed a tax on Airbnb owners, and Airbnb owners have passed on the cost to people who are finding accommodation on Airbnb. As a result, Airbnb is much more expensive than it used to be in the past. That said, it's still a great place to find accommodation in Playa del Carmen, especially if you want to explore neighborhoods before you make a commitment. So what you can do is rent an Airbnb for a few days or even a few weeks. And if you don't like that neighborhood, then you can move to another neighborhood and continue exploring and searching and trying different neighborhoods until you find the one that you like. And it's how I found my current place. I stayed in the apartment building that I'm currently in for a few days. And although I liked the neighborhood Colosio, I didn't really like the apartment I was in because it was a little smaller than what I wanted. So I told my landlord that I was looking to stay in Playa del Carmen for 3 months. And I was looking to stay in the neighborhood, but I was looking for something bigger. And he happened to tell me that there was actually a bigger apartment in the same building. So I checked it out, I fell in love with it, and then here I am. I ended up moving into the apartment. I signed a contract with him for 3 months, and then I paid a deposit, and that was about it. I didn't need any references because he had already scoped out my Airbnb reviews. And after staying in his apartment for a few days, he got to check out whether or not I was a good tenant. Initially, the 2-bedroom apartment that I'm in was going for 12,000 pesos, but I negotiated it down to 11,000 pesos. So it ended up working out well for the both of us. I got a 3-month place for 11,000 pesos in a 2-bedroom apartment, and he got a tenant for 3 months without having to wait for bookings on Airbnb. Another thing you can do is check out listings on Airbnb and then message the owner privately and ask him for a discount. I've never done this before, but I've heard of people who've successfully done this. The disadvantage though is that if you contact an owner and arrange a discount for a long-term stay and then end up moving into the place and then don't like it, then you're locked into a commitment for a few weeks or a few months. An alternative to that is staying in an Airbnb for a few days, and then if you like it, you can contact the owner privately and arrange a discount for a longer-term stay. Disadvantage to that is that there's no guarantee that the place that you want will still be available after you've stayed in it for a few days, especially during high season. Booking.com is another great place to find accommodation, and I find that sometimes it's much cheaper than Airbnb. So you go onto Booking.com and then you search for apartments or long-term stay rentals. I've never tried it in Playa del Carmen or Tulum though, but I've had success with it in the past in Mexico City. Facebook Marketplace is another great place where you can find apartments, and it's how I found my last apartment in Tulum. So what you do is basically go into Facebook Marketplace, go into the city, you put in Playa del Carmen, filter according to your neighborhood and your budget, and then search through the listings. I found that the people who actually put listings on Facebook Marketplace aren't actually the owners, but real estate agents. So what I've done in the past is contact the real estate agent and ask them about the property I'm interested in, and then I go and ask them if they have other property rentals available at my budget. So that way, if they show you one place that you don't like, then you can look at 4, 5, 6 different other places that fit your budget that you might end up liking. And that's how I found my place in Tulum. I contacted an agent about a place I was interested in, and although I didn't like the place that he showed me initially, he showed me 5 other places, and then I ended up moving into the place that I liked. Facebook groups are very popular in Mexico, and they're also a great place to find apartments. Here in Playa del Carmen, the Facebook groups you can use to find apartments include Expats and Locals in Playa del Carmen, Expats in Playa del Carmen, and Expats Playa del Carmen Uncensored. And what you basically do is once you're accepted into those Facebook groups, go through the posts and search for posts from people who have apartments to rent. Or you can also put up your own post and say that you're looking for an apartment in Playa del Carmen for the specific period that you want, as well as the budget. and then people will contact you with any availabilities, or they'll put you in contact with a real estate agent, or a real estate agent will respond to your post. I've used this in the past as well. When I was living in Mexico City, I went into one of the Facebook groups, put that I was looking for an apartment, and put in my budget and the amount of time that I was looking for. And then my landlord responded to my post and said that he had something available for my budget. And then we ended up negotiating a deal, and I moved into that place for a year. So Facebook groups are another great way to find apartments here in Playa Del Carmen. WhatsApp groups are also very popular here in Playa del Carmen, and people use it to make connections, find meetups, parties, events, to sell things, and find apartments. So once you're accepted in one of the Facebook groups that I mentioned earlier, then you can also search through the posts for WhatsApp groups to be accepted in. And once you're accepted in the WhatsApp groups, you can basically say, hey, I'm looking for an apartment in Playa del Carmen, and this is my budget and the amount of time I'm looking for. Are there any leads? I've never actually used WhatsApp groups for finding apartments, but I've heard of people who found apartments that way. Another thing you can do is pound the pavements and look for to rent signs. I've never done this before, and I think to do this, your level of Spanish has to be good enough to speak on the phone, or at least pray that the person that you speak to speaks English if you don't speak Spanish. And then the last thing is word of mouth. Once you're more plugged into the community here in Playa del Carmen, you'll hear from other expats, locals, and digital nomads about people who have apartments available for rent. For example, I go see an acupuncturist every week, and once my acupuncturist told me about a place that his landlord was renting a 2-bedroom apartment for about 11,000 pesos on Avenida 30 y Calle 30. Now this place wasn't being advertised on Facebook, nor was there a to rent sign available in front of the building as well. So it's just an example of how to find a place via word of mouth that you wouldn't necessarily hear of in the Facebook groups or from pounding the pavement. So I advise you to get more plugged into the community once you move to Playa del Carmen. That way you can hear of things via word of mouth that you necessarily won't see advertised elsewhere. So when it comes to your budget, you can expect to pay anything from $400 to $500 for a 1-bedroom up to $1,000, $1,500. And this will ultimately depend on the amenities in your building. So obviously if you want a swimming pool, a gym, a rooftop, then expect to pay more than you would for a basic 1-bedroom or studio. It also depends on where in town you decide to move. So if you Playa Car, Fuerteventuras, or 5th Avenue in the center of town, then you can also expect to pay more, $800, $900, up to $1,000 as well. And the further away you are from the center of town, for example, Real Ibiza, Ejidal, or south of Avenida 7M, for example, in Colosio, you can also expect to pay less. The time of year also makes a difference as well for your budget. So if you come during high season, which is the winter months in Europe, the US and Canada, December to March, then expect to pay more as well because there's higher demand and lower supply. But if you come during the summer months or early fall, where demand is lower and supply is higher, then you can expect to pay less and also have more negotiating power as well. If you're able to negotiate and bargain, then you expect to pay less than if you don't. And I always advocate for negotiating because it's not unheard of for landlords to charge foreigners a lot more than what they should be paying, especially with areas popular with foreigners and expats such as Tulum and Playa del Carmen. So I always advocate trying to negotiate and bargain. The worst that could happen is that you try and negotiate and then your landlord refuses to budge. At least you would have tried. But obviously it's a win-win situation if you try to negotiate, especially if the landlord is looking for someone who wants to stay long-term. So if you're looking to stay in an apartment for 6 months to a year, then I'd say try to negotiate and bargain with your landlord, because it's better for him to have someone who stays long-term as opposed to always trying to rent out his place, especially when it comes to fluctuations during low season and high season. So ultimately, the amount you pay here will depend on your ability to negotiate and bargain, the time of year that you come, where in town you move, and what amenities you're looking for. So that's it. That was a quick video with tips on how to find an apartment here in Playa del Carmen. And if you found this video useful, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any new videos from me. Adios.